Before we start, can we just take a deep breath? My dad was the most kindest, most generous and compassionate person that I've ever met. I never heard him say a single mean or unkind thing. Everything that Dad did was to unite people, to pacify and bring people together. Relationships are what meant the most to Dad. His relationships with people, family, friends, workmates, and his relationship with God. He never sought greatness, only goodness. My dad was born Perfecto Marpa Mary on April 8, 1928 in Santa Cruz, Nogales, in the Philippines. He also went by Uncle Pitong, or Lolo Pete by family, and Mario by his friends. He's the eldest of four. From the very beginning, he was a brave little kid. He would tell me stories of how he would go fishing up until midnight and even past, navigating his way through the jungle by moonlight, or by the sound of the water to guide him. He told me Grandpa never worried as long as he came back with some fish and he was okay. He was also very industrious growing up as a teen. I was in the Philippines once around 2005 and visiting the farm that he grew up in. And he was pointing out like, oh, I did this section here when I was 10. And I mean, these are orchards as far as I can look back. Oh, I did this when I was 15, and then I did this section here when I was 12. And it was very impressive to see that something that my dad had touched so long ago was still flourishing, and still giving fruit. As he got older, he would start picking up jobs here and there, and then venturing further and further away from the provinces, sometimes not even coming home for months. He would share a bed with 2 or 3 laborers, keeping his money in his pocket or in his a little sock. And he was even robbed once. I mean, losing months and months of, his hard-earned, money. And he would just say, lesson learned. And he continued to hustle. And this work ethic also would serve him moving forward. In college, he studied fine arts at the University of the Philippines, where he began to refine his technical drawing. He was a very talented artist. His initial plans, though, were to go into farming in Mindanao. But he admits later on his real goal was to come to America, and create a new life for himself and ultimately raise a family here. So he enlisted in the Navy. He failed his first time. He said, I didn't make the weight requirement. So the second time he went in, he stuffed himself with bananas and he just barely made it. So now, he has a date to be on a ship heading for the United States. Now, around the same time, representatives from Stanford University were visiting the campus and they were looking for new recruits. The recruiters came in and would talk to a supervisor and say, hey, do you have any artists available to do up these real quick schematics? And the supervisor said, yes, I do. I have one guy, but he's very busy. I do not want him to disturb. He's one of my productive guys. So behind the supervisor's back, they visited my dad. My dad not only drew with speed and accuracy, but attention to detail in a very short time, and so they were very impressed. So needless to say, that ship left without him. And he boarded a plane for the first time on a 3-month work visa at Stanford University. So he went from a farm to the farm. I don't know if you saw any of in the slideshow, you saw those mollusks, those weird-looking things. Those were the size of a grain of sugar. And he had to look through a microscope and then draw them to scale. I mean, and this is in the 1950s. There's no computer-aided design, there's none of that stuff. And he was looking through a microscope and drawing these mollusks to scale, with shading and everything, by hand. As soon as my dad sets foot on American soil, he already told himself there is absolutely no way I can be here. And that mindset, that vibrational frequency brought in a 1-year visa, working visa, and then after that, permanent residence. This is Professor Graham. This is the guy who plucked my dad out of obscurity. He was the head of the geology department at Stanford. And he would knock on his office, "Hey, Perfecto, are you busy? Are you busy?" He goes, "Yeah, you just dumped a whole, shitload of work on me right here." He goes, "You know what? Well, no, we're gonna go to a baseball game. Let's see who flips for coffee." Apparently, he owned a farm league team, and so he introduced my dad to baseball, Stanford football. They went on field trips, and so my dad really, really liked this guy. In fact, he was the first person to help my dad with a down payment on his first house. My memory of Stanford was sitting in the basket of his bike, riding around campus. And he's waving to his friends, "Hey, this is my son." I would go visit him in his office. And his office was huge. It was almost the size of half this room. And big drafting tables. But for me, the most interesting and the most fun was the dark room in the back. Back then you had to pull the film out, put it in the can, you had to go through an entire process of mixing and bathing, and then the pictures would magically appear on this, and that's left a huge impression on me. I wanted to be a photographer, but when I think about it, it's like, I just kind of want to be like my dad. He was at Stanford for 33 years, where he retired. But after retiring, he became a freelance artist working for various companies. He was amazed that the younger artists would rely heavily on the computer-aided program to a point where they didn't understand the basics of the drawing, where my dad, and they were impressed with my dad knowing that he could do all the basics that they were learning on a computer by hand. At the same time he freelanced, he also started a company called Rainmark Graphics, which is Roger, Edwin, Yolanda, Mari, Art. He set up shop in a house, and so which meant that I had all of this access to all these really cool tools, and whenever he left the house, I would run into his office and I would play with anything and everything. And this really came in handy when I became 17 and I created my first fake ID. Dad, thank you very much for helping me buy beer for my friends, even though I looked like I was 11 at the time. Okay, so fast forward, the kids are in college. The house is empty, and it had to be very lonely for my parents. So in come the Japanese exchange students. My parents hosted students for the next 7 years, and these students had a choice of staying for 6 months of the year. All of them stayed for a year. My dad loved having them there, and I really could tell because all of them got fat. The program would issue you, I guess they would pay for their lunches, and then we would take them. But if anyone's been to my house, it's a 24-hour buffet. There's always a pot of rice. My dad's always cooking. If you're sick, he'll cook for you. Whatever. He's always way too accommodating. He just went above and beyond. And when we would come home for vacations, we would take the students to Disneyland. We would take them to San Diego. We would take them skiing. They visited me in San Diego. I'd take them to Tijuana, down their first donkey show. But my dad really wanted to show them, the full experience of what it's like, living here. Now, when it comes to family, as far back as I can remember, he always had guests staying in the house. And I'm not talking just guests staying in the house. I mean, we're talking months and years. He always was helping them either get back on their feet or introducing them to the country. And it was like the Filipino Ellis Island. You come here first, he gives you an idea of how to get started. No matter how long you had to stay, he would accommodate you. And so even when I was a kid, there were just a lot of different families coming in and out, in and out. And it was really cool that my dad was this gatekeeper, because he was the first one to come here, was the gatekeeper for everyone else to follow. The holidays were always the best with our family. Each sibling hosted different parties, New Year's Eve, Christmas Day. With my dad, embodying the attitude of gratitude, so naturally our house hosted Thanksgiving, and so which was a huge part. And now I look back at it, it was only fitting. He loved carving that turkey, and he loved being surrounded by family. As time passed, my mother became ill, and it was difficult to take care of her at home. She was placed in a care home where her needs could be addressed safely. And this is where reality kind of set for my dad. He was very strong, very outgoing, and I think seeing this happen to him, he kind of slowly knew that something was going to be coming, to an end. He had difficulty getting out of bed, and he'd fall a lot. He couldn't go more than 5 to 10 feet without losing his breath. But his mind was still there. And so I think that was the toughest part. I would help him back, and he would help him back on the bed, and he'd say like, oh, how I could run through the jungle so fast when I was a kid. It was so much fun. We spoke openly almost every night. And I'm not gonna lie, we were both scared. We were both paddling in new waters, Dad facing the unknown, and me going on with life without my father. I'm dying. I know you are, Dad. Then why do you burden yourself with keeping me alive? I'm not trying to keep you alive. I only wish to ensure a comfortable transition. Dad, you're going to die in your sleep. First, it's going to feel like a dream. And then suddenly you'll realize it's not a dream, because you're going to be able to get out of this bed with no problem and run like you did when you were a kid in the jungle. Then you're going to fly. We would both laugh and chuckle. It was the one thing that I could help ease him. And Sky, I love you too. We'd cry a little. And I really appreciated the honest conversations I had with him about life and death. And I was honored to face it with him together. Nietzsche once said, a true test of a man's character is measured by how much truth he can handle. My dad's character was rock solid, and I knew it. And I was not about to candy coat anything with him. Especially a man who literally, figuratively, metaphorically looked into the darkest part of the jungle and said, that's where I'm going. None of us would be here if he hadn't taken those first steps into the unknown. And to have faith in himself, to let life unfold, and then whatever transpires, love that. On January 28th, my dad died in his sleep. So peaceful, like his life. It's amazing how one man can have such a huge impact on so many lives. There's a quote from a movie, Prince of Tides. It is in the presence of my wife and children that I acknowledge my life, my destiny. I'm a husband and a father and a well-loved man, and this is more than enough. This is the message my father would want us to receive today, to rejoice and be happy. For today, he is free of pain and enjoying the experiences far beyond the burdens of third-dimensional reality. Remember him with love and kindness. Do not feel sorrow. He's fishing in the best waters now. My name is Edwin Thomas Murray, son of Perfecto Marco Murray. I'm a freelance technical artist and engineer, and a damn good photographer. And I'm proud to say, God for my dad. Thank you.